Now we are going to discuss the most important problem of nuclear force, that is nucleon-nucleon scattering. In particular way, we will consider in this lecture the neutron-proton scattering. As you know, in any scattering experiment, the quantity which is measured to analyze the scattering is actually the scattering cross-section. And normally, a scattering cross-section is energy dependent. That is, it depends on the energy of the projectile. So, the neutron-proton scattering cross-section will also depend on energy, and hence the workers on this have done work in the low and high energy of incident neutrons. Particularly in this lecture, we are going to discuss the low energy NP scattering, and after that we will also consider the scattering of neutron and proton system at high energy. First of all, we will see the experimental result regarding the low energy NP scattering. See this graph. Actually, this graph has been plotted on the basis of the experimental result obtained by Melkonian and Wren and his co-workers. You can see from this graph that the scattering cross-section depends strongly on the energy of the incident neutron. See this figure. I have just noted the values of the cross-section in which is in unit of Born on the vertical axis, and the energy of the neutron, that is that of the projectile, in electron volt on the horizontal axis. What you see, when the neutron energy is very small, this is in fact from 10 to the power minus 3 electron volt to 1 electron volt, in that region actually the cross section increases at a large rate. You can see from this it just tends towards infinity. And in the region from 1 electron volt to 10 to the power 5 electron volt, this scattering cross section is almost constant, and actually the value obtained by Melkonian was on average 20.36 Born per free proton. Here I have mentioned free proton because in this case you will see that the scattering of neutron will take place with a free proton. How we get a free proton or how it is possible, we will discuss it just now. So the Melkonian result is that the scattering cross section, that is the total scattering cross section, is 20.36 Born per free neutron. Actually, another scientist named Squires and his co-workers has also obtained the same result, and this result is sigma equal to 20.41 Born per free proton. Actually, these two results are very similar, and actually in this lecture we will actually explain this result, experimental result, by the theory and by, you can say, a simplified theory which is actually known as partial wave analysis. Why we follow the partial wave analysis, what are its advantages, we will also see in this lecture. But first of all, you have to know at low energy, when you say low energy, it means energy which is actually less than 10 mega electron volt. Energy E less than 10 mega electron volt. It means we will talk about the neutron which will be scattered by free proton with energy having value always less than 10 mega electron volt. Actually, In this range of energy, which is less than 10 mega electron volt, scattering is essentially due to neutrons with angular momentum L equal to 0. I am just mentioning it here, but I will explain it later on in this lecture, that if the neutron energy E is less than 10 mega electron volt, in this condition the scattering of neutron is in what condition? In this condition, actually the orbital angular momentum L will be 0, and if L is 0, what does it mean? Actually it means the angular distribution of the scattered neutrons will be isotropic, and when you say isotropic, it means potential will be in fact spherically symmetric, and our system will be in the center of mass system. So this L equal to 0 implies that the scattered neutrons is isotropic. In the center of mass system. So as I have told you, the explanation of these experimental results, which I am just going to explain, is actually by a powerful method which is known as partial wave method, or you can say partial wave analysis. So I am just following partial wave analysis. Partial wave analysis. Just I have told you why we follow this method, partial wave analysis, what are the advantages of this method. We will also discuss it, but first of all we have to know, when we say that a neutron will be incident on a target containing a proton, it means you are considering that the proton is free. It is not interacted by any other particle with any other proton or any other particle, because we have to deal with the scattering by the interaction between this neutron and this proton only. That is due to the nuclear force. We have to discuss the scattering. But in actual target there will be so many protons, and if there are a system of protons or a large number of protons in a target, definitely there will be Coulombian interaction between the protons. But as I have told you, our aim is to discuss the interaction between this projectile, that is neutron, a striking neutron, and the proton. So this proton should not be interacted with other protons. But how it will be possible? As you have learnt in Compton effect, that Compton effect, when we study, we in fact consider that the electromagnetic photon is interacted with a free electron, but electron is in a target. How we can treat the electron free? Actually we consider that the striking photon has an energy which is much greater than the energy binding energy of the electron. In that condition, that electron is treated as free with respect to the striking photon. Actually that clue is used here. We in actual experiment, there are several protons in the molecules of the target, and there will be Coulombian interaction between them, and I have to avoid the Coulombian interaction because we are going to discuss the interaction between the striking neutron and the target proton. So to avoid the Coulombian force, we consider that the scattering of neutrons by free protons, and when you say free proton, it means we consider that the protons are not bonded to molecules. We consider it. But how it is possible? How we can consider that the proton is in a molecule, but it is treated as free? Actually, it is found that the protons are bonded to molecule, and the molecular binding energy of, or you can say chemical energy of proton in the molecule is less than 0.1 electron volt. You can say molecular binding energy of a proton in a molecule, in the molecule of the target, is actually less than 0.1 electron volt. So, if we consider that the neutron, a striking neutron or the projectile, has an energy much greater than this binding energy of the proton, in that condition we can treat the proton free with respect to the striking neutron. So in actual experiment, to avoid the Coulombian interaction, we consider that the neutron energy is greater than 1 electron volt. So if the energy of the striking neutron is greater than 1 electron volt, then the proton may be treated as free, as far as neutrons are concerned. So, it is an experimental requirement to treat the bonded proton as free proton. We must take a projectile having energy greater than 1 electron volt. So, in actual experiment, we follow, or we in fact obey this condition that the striking neutron should not have an energy less than 1 electron volt, so that the proton may be treated as free and we can avoid the Coulombian interaction. Actually, NP scattering is an elastic scattering, and so the use of CM system is convenient. You have learnt in the previous lecture that in case of elastic scattering, the convenience in calculation will be only when we consider the center of mass system. And you know, the quantum mechanical problem describing the interaction between two particles in the center of mass system is equivalent to the problem of interaction between a reduced mass particle and a fixed center. In quantum mechanics, we always consider that the two-body problem is reduced into one-body problem, and in that case we consider that there is a single particle, and that single particle has a mass which is equal to reduced mass of the system, and the scattering potential or the scattering force is fixed, and that is taken as the center of scattering. So let us suppose the neutron and proton interact via a spherically symmetric force, or you can say a spherically symmetric potential, which is denoted by V of R. So in this condition, we consider that the force or potential responsible for this scattering is spherically symmetric. This is V of R. You can see this V depends only on R, not on the angular coordinates. So as it does not depend on angular coordinates, it depends only on R. So this is spherically symmetric. A spherically symmetric potential. And you know, our square wave potential is a best example of a spherically symmetric potential. So we can take the square wave potential as an example of it. See this figure here. This is actually minus V naught. This is depth of the potential, and we actually note V of R on this vertical axis and R on this. And this is actually range of this potential R naught, and the neutron which strikes the proton will have a positive energy, and so this represents the energy of the projectile, that is the neutron. And in this region this potential is experienced, and after this region, that is when R is greater than R naught, this potential actually vanishes, this becomes zero. So we considered the square wave potential or the spherically symmetric potential to analyze this problem. And we know that the time independent Schrodinger equation to deal with this problem in a quantitative way with a central potential V of R or a spherically symmetric potential V of R will be what? So we can write the Schrodinger equation time independent equation. Independent equation for a spherically symmetric potential. A spherically symmetric potential V of R will be what? This will be actually del square psi plus m over h cross square E minus V of R psi equal to 0. And in this equation, what is this m? You know, we have already discussed it in bond state problem, that is deuteron problem. Actually this m is the reduced mass of the system. This is actually mp into mn over mp plus mn. And as the mass of a proton and a neutron are almost same, and if we consider that is m, then this will be simply m square over 2m, and so this will be m over 2. And this is actually the reduced mass of the NP system. As I have told you, we are going to discuss the problem in CM system, and in CM system the two body problem is reduced into a one body problem by considering the mass of the system equal to its reduced mass. So in this equation, this capital M is actually the reduced mass of this NP system. Actually, to analyze the scattering event, we will solve this equation under the proper boundary conditions. And as I have told you in the introductory lecture, that at large distances from the scattering center, the wave should be made up of two parts. When we have discussed the quantum mechanical idea or quantum mechanical concept of a scattering, I have told you this very important fact, that the whole scattering process can be splitted into two parts. The first one is what? The first one is the time which is very large before in fact scattering. That is when you say t tends to minus infinity. Actually, this represents the event, scattering event, the event before scattering, you can say. And in this case, when t tends to minus infinity, the wave we consider is actually the plane wave. That is the incident wave, which is treated as a plane wave. These facts I have already discussed in the previous lectures. So, in this limiting condition, the wave is an incident plane wave. And the another condition is when t tends to plus infinity. That is, after scattering, after a long time after scattering, we consider that the wave which is scattered is actually a spherical wave. So, when t tends to plus infinity, the wave is a scattered wave which emanates from the scattering center. So, in fact, we seek a solution of the Schrödinger equation, which I have defined here, that is equation 1, in a particular form. So, the solution of equation 1, which is actually time independent Schrödinger equation, particularly in asymptotic form, we will write this solution as psi equal to psi incident plus psi scattered. Here actually this psi inc indicates the wave function of the incident plane wave, and this psi sc represents the wave function of the scattered spherical wave. Actually, the problem of scattering, long before the scattering takes place, when we consider the wave as a plane wave, we consider that the potential which is responsible for this scattering is switched off, because you know when this condition will hold, that is when t will tend to minus infinity, actually the neutron will be unaffected from the scattering potential V of r. And so if we consider that V of r is 0, there will be no fault in our assumption, because in this condition the neutron will be unaffected from the scattering potential. So we can seek the solution of the Schrödinger equation when V of r is equal to 0. So first of all, in this condition we can take this V of R is equal to 0. It means we are just switching off the scattering potential, and if we will switch off the scattering potential, so in that condition there will be no scattering, and if there will be no scattering, the incident wave and the resulting wave will be actually same. So in that condition psi, there will be no scattering, and so psi SC will be in fact 0, and hence you can see from this equation 2 that this psi will be actually equal to psi INC. And so in this condition, the solution of the Schrodinger equation, that is when V of R is 0, first of all we will see that what will be the Schrodinger equation in this condition. So in this condition, equation 1 is reduced to, this will be actually del square psi plus m over h cross square E psi equal to 0, and say this is equation 3. And in this equation, or we may write this equation in this way, that is del square psi plus k square psi equal to 0. Say this equation is actually equation 3. In fact, here I have substituted this k for what? Actually, this k square is equal to me over h cross h square, and so this implies the k will be equal to plus root over me over h cross square. So if we write the plane wave solution of this equation 3, so what will be that solution? So the wave function that describes the incident plane wave moving in the positive z direction, as in the experimental setup you are always consider that the incident wave is in the direction of z. So the plane wave solution of equation 3, we will write it psi INC is equal to e to the power ikz, and ikz, or you can write it as e to the power I k dot r. And if we consider that the angle between vector k and r is theta, then we can write it as ikr cosine of theta. So say this is equation 4. Actually, I have already mentioned in the previous lectures that here in this solution we do not write the normalization factor, because our final aim is to find the cross section, and in finding cross section the normalization factor do nothing. It has no role in finding the cross section, and so we drop the normalization factor in this solution. So this is this equation 4 is actually the solution of Schrodinger equation when we consider that there is no scattering potential present when V of R is 0, and this actually represents the incident wave, and you can see this is actually the incident plane wave. So now we can see from this result that what will be the actually the probability of finding of particle in this region. You know from the physical interpretation of wave function that the modulus of the square of the modulus of wave function measures the probability density. So if we find the probability density, that is psi inc mod square, what will be this? You can see this will be in fact psi inc star into psi inc, and this will be e to the power minus ikz into e to the power ikz, and this will be 1. And if it is 1, what this result actually implies? Actually this result implies that the wave function, that is psi inc, defined in this equation 4, represents one particle per unit volume. So this result implies that one particle per unit volume, one particle per unit volume. So this is the solution of Schrodinger equation when we switch off the scattering potential, and we consider that the scattering event is actually we are considering far before when the neutron is in the field of the proton or in the field of the scattering potential. Now, after knowing the form of this incident wave function, our next problem is to devise a suitable form for the scattered wave function. And as you know, the scattered wave is spherical. So the scattered wave function can be written in a particular form, which I have just discussed in the previous lecture in quantum mechanical idea of scattering. So as the scattered wave is spherical, so the scattered wave function we will in fact write it as psi sc equal to f of theta e to the power ikr over r. Say this is equation 5. You can see here this f of theta is actually the amplitude of the scattered wave. A scattered wave in the direction theta. Actually, in the basic lecture of this topic, I have actually mentioned this as f of omega, and that f of omega was actually f of sigma phi, f of theta phi, because in that introductory lecture we have considered the scattering in 3D case, but here actually our scattering is two-dimensional. Say this is our proton and the neutron gets scattered in this way, and so this angle is measured as theta. This is a scattered neutron, and here is our scattering center, let us say proton. So this is actually a two-dimensional scattering, and hence this phi does not come into the amplitude. And you can also say that as the scattering potential is spherically symmetric. So in case of spherically symmetric potential, you know that the amplitude of the scattered wave is independent of phi. It does not depend on phi. It depends only on theta. So here, as I have assumed the scattering potential is spherically symmetric, I have taken actually this potential in the form of a square wave potential. So the scattering amplitude is f of theta, not of f of theta and phi. It is independent of phi actually. So psi sc is equal to f of theta e to the power ikr over r. This equation defines the wave function of the scattered spherical wave. Now, if we will find a justification for this, why we consider the scattered wave function in this form, you can see here that if we consider this psi sc in this form, what will be the probability of finding of the particle in this region? So I am just here giving a justification for the form of the wave function defined in equation 5. Why we consider this scattered wave function in this form? Let us say a look to explain it. So first of all, find the modulus of psi sc square. What will be this? You can see from here, this will be mod of f theta square e to the power minus ikr into e to the power ikr over r square. And so you can see here that this probability density psi sc mod square is actually inversely proportional to r square. And as the wave is spherical, it will be in fact emitted from the scattering center in all directions. So the wave front will be spherical. And if we consider a spherical volume, an elementary spherical volume lying between radius r and r plus dr, then what will be the volume of this elementary volume? So this will be actually equal to, you can see this volume will be what? This will be 4 pi r square dr. You know this is actually differential of 4 by 3 pi r cube, and this will be 4 pi r square dr. And so if we measure the particle density, that is the number of particle in unit volume, will be what? Actually this will be number of scattered particle nsc divided by this volume, and this volume is what? This is 4 pi r square dr. And so you can see from here that this particle density is actually inversely proportional to r. So what you see, if we consider the wave function psi sc has this form, we have find that the probability density is inversely proportional to r square, and in this condition this must be, in fact particle density must be inversely proportional to of r square. So to fulfill this condition, the wave function must have this form which has been defined in equation 5. So this is just a justification why we consider the scattered wave function in this particular form. Now the wave function or you can say the total wave function psi, which are actually the sum of the psi incident and psi scattered. Now we can write it as, so we can write psi equal to psi incident plus psi scattered and so this implies this psi will be equal to e to the power ik z plus f of theta e to the power ikr over r. Say this is equation 6. Now, you have learnt that in Fourier analysis, we often expand an arbitrary function into a series of harmonic functions of various frequencies. And so, we expand the incident plane wave, this incident plane wave e to the power ikz, or you can say e to the power ikr cos theta. We will actually expand this incident plane wave in terms of Legendre polynomials PL of cos theta. So, now you can expand this psi incident, which is actually equal to what? E to the power ikz, and this may be written as e to the power ikr cos theta, and we can expand this in terms of the Legendre polynomials as summation L equal to 0 to infinity BL of R PL of cos theta. Actually here PL of cos theta is Legendre polynomial. Legendre polynomial. And in this expression, what is this L? L is actually an integer which represents the various partial waves. It is integer representing various partial waves. And the radial wave function BL of R, actually this BL of R is radial wave function. It is also written as UL of R, BL of R, this is a radial wave function. And actually this radial wave function BL of R is defined in terms of a spherical Bessel function. This BL of R is given as I to the power L into 2L plus 1 JL of KR. JL of KR. In this expression, this JL of KR is what? This is actually a spherical Bessel function of Lth order. This is a spherical Bessel function. This spherical Bessel function is defined as JL of KR. We define it in this way. This is actually equal to minus 1 to the power L, Kr to the power L, 1 over Kr d dKr to the power L sine Kr by Kr. This is actually the definition of this spherical Bessel function. And from here you can actually evaluate some of the spherical Bessel function which will be in fact needed in the forthcoming lectures. So from this you can find, from this we can find J0 of Kr. If you take L equal to 0, you can see this will be 1, this will be 1, and this will be also 1, and so the result will be simply sine Kr by Kr. And J1 of Kr, when we will take L equal to 1, what will be the result? This will be in fact minus 1 and minus, and this will be Kr, the minus Kr, and here will be 1 over Kr d dKr and sine Kr by Kr. Now see, this Kr will cancel out and differentiate this. So, and here is minus. If we will differentiate sine Kr by Kr with respect to Kr, what will be, what we will get? There here first term will be in fact minus sine Kr by Kr square, and second term will be cos Kr by Kr, and so when you will introduce this minus sign, so this J1 of Kr will be equal to sine Kr by Kr minus cos Kr square, cos Kr by Kr. This will be actually J1 of Kr. In this way, you can find the various spherical Bessel function for different values of L. Now, as I have told you, we are seeking the solution of Schrodinger equation in asymptotic form. So asymptotically, that is when you say that r tends to infinity, the spherical Bessel function will become in a simpler form. So asymptotically, when r tends to infinity, then the spherical Bessel function JL of Kr, this JL of Kr will be given when this condition is r tends to infinity. We have just mentioned the condition here. This will be in fact in this form, sine Kr minus L pi by 2 over Kr. Bessel function is this much when we consider the condition r tends to infinity. And we are just considering this asymptotic solution So our interest on this Bessel function lies on this form only. And so asymptotically, when we will find the radial wave function, that is BL of R, which I have mentioned in the above equation, what will be that BL of R? So when R tends to infinity, then the radial wave function BL of R is given as we have seen, this BL of R is defined how it is defined. See here, I have just mentioned the definition of this BL of R. In fact, here this BL of R is defined here, I to the power L 12 plus 1 JL of KR. So this BL of R is actually equal to I to the power L 2L plus 1 into JL of KR. And therefore, if we will evaluate this radial wave function under the condition R tends to infinity, that is in asymptotic condition, what will be this? See the value of this JL of KR in this asymptotic condition. So this will be simply I to the power L 2L plus 1 into sine KR minus L pi over 2 by KR. And we can write it in this way. First of all, see, I am just repeating this term I to the power L 2L plus 1 over KR. And you know this sine KR minus L pi by 2 can be written as e to the power I KR minus L pi by 2 minus e to the power minus I KR minus L pi by 2 and whole divided by 2I. We can write it in this way. And so this BL of R in asymptotic form may be defined as in equation 10. And in a similar way, the amplitude of the spherical wave, that is f of theta, is also expressed in terms of the Legendre polynomial. So similarly, f of theta is expressed as summation L0 to infinity f of L PL of cos theta. PL of cos theta. And this f of L actually is a function of 12 plus 1. And so we can write the total wave function in this way. You can write psi equal to, This is psi incident plus psi SC. And when we will make the use of the above results, then we will get psi INC, and psi INC is actually equal to what? This is summation L0 to infinity BL of R PL of cos theta, and psi SC you know this is in fact f of theta, and f of theta is defined as this much. So this will be summation L0 to infinity f of L PL of cos theta and e to the power IKR divided by R. And if we will use the expression for this radial wave function BL of R, which I have defined above, so substituting the value of this BL of R, we can write this expression as summation L equal to 0 to infinity I to the power L into 2L plus 1 JL of KR plus FL e to the power IKR by R PL of cos theta. Actually, this is the total wave function. Actually, in this lecture, I am just stopping my lecture here. The remaining part I will like to discuss in the next lecture, because the problem is very large, and so I have divided this lecture in two parts. The remaining part we will discuss in second lecture.